If you want to start making and selling your own t-shirts, first you have to decide how you're going to make your shirts. There are 4 main ways of making your own shirts at home: HTV, DTF, sublimation, and screen printing. I'm not going to talk about screen printing because I don't have any experience with that personally, but let's go over some of the pros and cons of the other 3 that I mentioned. So the first one is HTV. That stands for heat transfer vinyl. It's also known as iron-on vinyl, and this is what you would use with a Cricut machine or a similar cutting machine. Some of the pros of HTV are that it's not very expensive. It's usually less than $1 a square foot, and it's pretty easy to learn how to do. One of the cons to making shirts with HTV is that it does take a lot of time. So this is not the method that you want if you're going to be producing shirts like in large quantities, because just cutting them with the Cricut and then weeding and applying, that all takes time. Another thing to keep in mind is that your designs will need to be fairly simple. You can layer HTV and use multiple colors, but the more layers you add, it starts getting kind of thick, and that doesn't always feel nice on a shirt. So HTV is best, in my opinion, just for single layer designs and simple designs. The supplies you'll need for that are a Cricut machine or a similar cutting machine, and then a heat press. The second method is DTF transfers. So DTF stands for direct to film, and it uses a special DTF printer to print onto a plastic film, and then that design is then heat pressed onto a shirt. After you heat press, you peel away the plastic film and it leaves behind your print. The pros to DTF is that it's a fast process. You can make a lot of shirts in a short amount of time once you have your transfers. But the cons are that a DTF printer is pretty big and expensive. So I would definitely recommend ordering your DTF prints from a printing company and trying out the process first to see if you like it and to see if your shirts are selling before you invest in a big printer. I think shirts made with DTF transfers are super professional looking. It looks like something that you would buy at the store, and they're pretty thin. They don't feel like too crunchy on the shirt or anything, and they're very durable, so they wash well. Another con to DTF prints though is that it is more expensive. So depending on where you get your transfers from, they can be upwards of like $5 or $6 per transfer. You can put DTF on any type of material, so your shirt doesn't need to be a certain color or certain polyester count like with sublimation, and that's the one I'm going to talk about next. To make shirts with sublimation, you'll need a sublimation printer, and then it also uses special sublimation ink and sublimation paper. You can actually convert a inkjet printer into a sublimation printer, so it's not super expensive to get started, but you will need to learn how to use the printer and kind of fine-tune all of the color settings. Sublimation's just not my favorite type of craft, so I don't do it very often, and I don't have my own sublimation printer, so I usually order my sublimation prints off of Etsy. I honestly just kind of hate printers, so I've just never wanted to deal with like learning how to use it, and printers just give me a headache. For sublimation, your shirts will need to be at least 50% polyester because the sublimation ink only binds to polyester. They'll also need to be a light color, so you can't sublimate onto dark colors. The biggest pro to sublimation is that the ink is infused directly into the material of the shirt. So it doesn't feel like there's anything on top of the shirt, it just kind of becomes part of the shirt. So it's super soft and comfortable. Also, it can't peel off or come off in the wash, although over time it does tend to kind of fade a little bit after you've washed it a bunch of times. For all of these methods, you'll need to have a large heat press. Don't try to do this with like a household iron. If you're really wanting to get into selling t-shirts, you'll want a nice heat press, and I recommend getting one that's at least 12 by 10 inches. Even bigger would be better. There's a lot more to making shirts that I won't be able to go into in this video because it's getting too long, but if you have any questions and you've made it this far, please let me know and I'd be happy to chat about it.